Hey Rob, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning. How you
Morning,
doing,
bud.
Chad?
Good.
All right, let's get right into it. So I'm with Chad Peters, CEO of RDG on the TSX venture. We're going to talk about early stage, exploration. So finding a prospect and then advancing that prospect through the different stages to get it up to a drill program. And then we'll even talk a little bit about a drill program. First, Chad, I want to start out by asking you about the company. I was out there. We went to see. I was in Reno in April. Went out to see Big Blue. Little day trip out there. You guys were working on a financing at that time. Share price was about 12 cents, I think, and you're starting to get a little more attention in recent weeks. What do you attribute the increased attention to, and how do you build on this momentum?
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of a mix of a few things that got a little more eyes on the stock, I guess, since we closed the financing. Between kind of January and March, I had a lot of shareholders who were excited about what was happening with Selena, or not even, sorry, when I say shareholders, I mean actually retail folks that were just interested in getting in on the story. And kind of the common feedback I got over that time frame was really like what you're doing, but until you complete a financing, I'm not going to initiate a position. So I think kind of what happened there right out the gate is closing the financing, got some eyes on the stock. That was followed by us announcing NGM, doing a 5.2 million US program, which is our largest budget in history. So I think the combination of both, as well as quite a few folks that were kind of looking to initiate a position but weren't in a rush until we closed, that's what kind of drove, I think, a lot of volume and buying in the stock as soon as we closed, and it's kind of created its own momentum since then.
Okay, you've done a few long form interviews in the last few weeks, so we're not going to do that and have you
Yep.
say the same things over and over again. But I am just kind of interested in a quick rundown. What kind of news flow can shareholders expect over the coming months?
Yeah, so it's actually going to be a pretty busy few months here. Now that the financing's done, I can start. We're finalizing our IP survey at Big Blue. That's going to be a really important survey for us, right? We're really excited about that project, and I think the IP is what really cracks it open. Most of the target is under shallow cover in the valley, so it truly is a blind porphyry target, and so that IP is hopefully going to unlock a lot of upside there. And then on top of it, we're getting a plan of operations permit, should be approved hopefully in the next 30 to 45 days at our Selena project, and that is a massive de-risking event. And I think maybe a lot of folks don't realize, how the difference between notice of intent exploration permit in the US, which is only 5 acres of disturbance. We've essentially used all of that disturbance at Selena over the last 5 years. So we have nowhere to go until that plan of operations gets approved. There's no new pads that can be built, no new roads. We're just waiting. So getting that done sets us up for the next 5 to 7 years of exploration on that project, and we can take it all the way to development with that permit alone. So it's a big deal for us. So between that, Selena and Big Blue, and then we have the drill program starting at Swift. There's going to be a lot of news flow over the next, call it, 3 to 6 months.
That's great to hear. That is music to my ears because I feel like at the end of last year, like October, November 2023, I made a few videos sort of pounding the table. Like, you got to buy Ridgeline at 10 cents. Like, here's why I like it. The valuation is so cheap. And nobody was really paying attention. And I feel like I was shouting into, like an empty room. Um, and like you said, nobody really cared because they wanted to see you close a financing. But now you're moving forward on your two flagship projects, and those are two pretty big catalysts coming down, the pipe here in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So with Big Blue, the IP. So I heard you say in one of the interviews that look, we're not going to commit to a drill program in 2024 at Big Blue yet. Keyword yet. We want to see this IP, and if it shows us what we're really looking for there at depth, if it's a big enough target, then we could actually do a core program, a 3 or 4 hole core program with our current treasury. So, I looked at the core assets news from, Wednesday morning, and that got me really excited. By the way, I'm a shareholder of core assets as well. And I look at that some of those graphics that they put together. Like if you look at their presentation, it's CC on the CSE, figure one, and then even like figure four is sort of like a model of how these telescope porphyries work. And so if you see anything like what they are showing, you're going to be like, let's do this, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, the exciting thing for us is underneath the Delker mine, we already have a 3D inversion, which shows a similar, mag high about 400 meters beneath the Delker and Scarn Hill, Delker mine and the Scarn Hill adit. So that mag inversion, that mag high, it runs for a kilometer and a half north, east west, and it's about a kilometer wide, and then it dives under cover, and that's where we lose it. We lose it under some cover, and the edge of the survey was stopped right at the edge of Scarn Hill. So we already have kind of that in our eyes, that similar evidence, although we haven't gone and created a shape out of it. So what the next step for us is taking what we know of the magnetic inversion, which shows a high, and hoping that we get a corresponding chargeability high to go along with it, right? Which would show not only is there potentially a porphyry here, but it also appears to be mineralized, at the very least has a whole bunch of pyrite in it, right? So yeah, I like similar mag, seeing a similar mag anomaly with our Selena porphyry target there that we announced in March. So yeah, it's a really good first step, and I think the next thing for us is getting that IP survey done. It is a 3D IP, so we're going to get an actual proper 3D dimensional shape out of that, hopefully showing a large anomaly. And if we see something that's really incredible, yeah, we're going to put some holes down on it. I just don't want to promise to the market that there's absolutely going to be a drill program. If we do the IP survey and it's inconclusive, or there's a very mediocre anomaly there, I'm not chucking. I'm not going to be chucking money at it this fall.
Right. Yeah. So the good thing is you have two flagship projects. So
Yeah,
if the IP at Big Blue doesn't show what you really want to see, then you got your plan of operations and you can go focus on the other projects. So you
exactly.
got two
Yep.
flagships. One is not going to kill you, but you don't want to throw $2 million at a drill program that's not really high priority, right?
Exactly. And you know what? Like we could probably do a first, 3 hole fence, like a first pass program at Big Blue for considerably less than $2 million. We could probably do it for, I don't know, just thumb suck numbers around 750,000 Canadian. I
Hmm.
own a drilling company, a private drilling company as well. So we can get the best possible pricing in Nevada when we do these programs. So yeah, it's certainly something that we're considering, and it really just comes down to the IP. And like you said, we can always pivot to Selena once that permit's approved if we don't love what we're seeing at Big Blue.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm very hopeful for Big Blue, as you know. But yeah, let's see what the 3D IP shows. So to the main focus of the conversation, because I think this is a really interesting topic. A lot of investors in junior mining read company news. They go on co.ca. They go on X. They make posts. And a lot of times they're making comments that show they really don't know what they're talking about and how this sector works and how tough the process of finding a new exploration prospect is, and then getting it to the point of being ready to be drilled, and then how a drill program actually works, and like what's a realistic time frame and the things that could go wrong with a drill program. This is your area of real expertise. So how do you find a new prospect? Like you say, okay, I want to find a copper deposit. What's the process, of finding
Yeah.
a new prospect?
No, for sure. And look, like I'll caveat this with this is, Ridgeline's approach to it. There's, a million geos out there. Everybody has their different approach, and that certainly doesn't make it wrong. This is just how we kind of tackle projects. So, one of the things like what we do is, Mike Harp, our VP exploration, he kind of reminds me of like that mad scientist stuff of Back to the Future, right? Like he's literally, he really gets into the weeds on geology. And what he's built is he's built a Nevada wide structure map. So he's essentially taken publicly available, geophysics, geochemistry, publicly available mapping, and he's pretty much created what he believes is a map of first order structures, is what we call them in Nevada. So the big cracks, right? The big, the big controlling structures that control the Carlin Trend, that control north-south porphyry trends in Nevada. And so he's created a map that actually has these first order structures, and then he has second and third order structures bleeding off of those. And this is not new. There's lots of geologists that do exactly this in Nevada, but this is how our first step is. We review that map and we go, okay, what deposit style are we looking for? Are we looking for porphyry copper? Are we looking for a Carlin type gold system? And then we go back into public record. We load all available historic mines, prospects, etc., and they're coded by commodity type. We then use that and we layer it over our data set of our structural map showing our first order structures, etc. We use all available geophysics, public geochemistry that we have, and we start looking into, okay, what districts do we want to be operating in, and are there historic districts that have been forgotten about in Nevada that fall on these first order structures or very near them on the second order splays. And that's what we focus on. So in the case of Big Blue, we did exactly that, right? We felt Big Blue was a major north-south controlling feature or trend that continues all the way from the Robertson mine down by Ely, all the way up through Selena and then up into Big Blue. And to us, that was a core north-south Cretaceous porphyry trend. And so that's how it was originally identified. And then we build from there, right? We look at it, we get out in the field, we do use our XRF and any available data, maps, geochemistry that our guys can find. And we go out and we actually just literally just prospect all over, um, check out all the old prospects, sample, XRF. And that's how we first identify, okay, is this an area we want to be working in? After that, the guys really get down a rabbit hole, I guess you could say, right? So, for example, we're working on a project we really like right now, and we've already started putting some stakes in the ground, at least to secure the land while we do the research, and it looks really exciting, right? Like in our case, this new project we're working on. It is a first order. We call it a major northwest crack that we believe has both porphyry and CRD potential, and it's showing significant scale. When we go out and walk on the ground, we see kilometers of alteration, skarn alteration, metamorphism, and marbleization of the host rocks, high grade, copper and other base metals and gold at surface along major structural, along major cracks. There's historic mining in the area. Those are all the different things we look for, right? Like we want to see the right host rocks, major structural trends, and we want to see past production. That's kind of what our main focus is right now. If guys in the 1800s and 1900s were going and going after this stuff with a pickaxe, then there's probably a decent sized system there that they weren't able to go after with the current technology at that time, right? So that's our early stage pass. Is if it hits those kind of main marks, we then get out in the field. We'll probably spend 2 or 3 weeks mapping, prospecting, and confirming the old the old workings and the old theories there of what the mineralization might be. And in this case, the next step is stakes in the ground, which we do all internally. So that's kind of the first pass, I guess, kind of in a roundabout way. Sorry if that got a little rambly.
No, that was great. So with Big Blue, for example, you were looking at the big picture structures,
Yep.
and you'd be like, this is a place where you could find a porphyry.
Yep.
And then you go out in the field. And what are you doing when you go out in the field? Are you mapping? Are you doing soil sampling? Are you picking up rocks? What's all the work that you need to do to say, okay, let's stake this?
The beauty of Nevada is most of it's been mapped, right? So if you look hard enough, you can probably find a USGS map or an old, from a corporate group that's mapped a project already, even if it's hasn't been for 30 years. And usually what we'll do is we'll go out, we'll field check that map, we'll confirm it, are we see, or is this matching with what was mapped historically? A lot of times it doesn't. It's really tough to map a weathered limestone or something at surface, right? Whether it's Mississippian or Devonian in age, it can be sometimes really tough to pick out. So, so what we actually like to see is I like to see some of the mapping not match up, because usually that means there's an opportunity there, right? If someone has misidentified a rock unit, misidentified the strike or dip of a major structure, you name it, right? But a lot of times that can highlight, where maybe people went in the wrong direction in the past, and we see it as an opportunity. So we like to confirm the historic mapping. We go out, we rock chip as many, get as many rock chips as we can off to the lab. We also do XRFing in real time, so the guys can be forming an interpretation using the traced element geochemistry in real time as they're mapping. And then we tie that all together with whatever, historic data, drilling, if there is some, any historic data we can find. We then tie that all together and we'll put together a summary of what we think the opportunity is, and then we'll take it to our board and review and recommend whether we stake or move on to the next thing.
So with the XRF, you said that so you're looking for pathfinders there with the XRF, or are you just looking for gold and copper in the rocks?
Well, it's both, right? And luckily, with the XRF, we have our Olympus. We get really accurate base metals, copper, base metals, silver. What we can't get a good read on, these XRFs are not well calibrated to gold, and I don't know the science behind why they're not. I just know that you can't trust gold values coming out of our XRF. And there's I don't think there's any that give a really clear idea on gold, but we can be in there. We can zap a quartz vein full of copper and tetrahedrite in real time. For example, at this project we were on, and we know that okay, well, that sample is running somewhere between 5 and 10% copper and 1,000 grams silver, right? And on a quartz vein that's extent you can map its surface for 1,000 feet and it looks to be about 5 feet wide. So those are the kind of things you look at that and you go, okay, this has some serious scale. In the case of what we look for, and one of the major things when we're looking for these porphyries is a lot of the porphyry targets are undercover in Nevada, right? So what you need to do is you need to look at these more distal features that you see outcropping on range fronts, actual outcropping rock, and you need to be able to. We look at it and go, okay, is this skarn or is this quartz vein full of copper and different metals? Is this thing a distal feature of a larger porphyry system, or is it just a tiny inconsequential crack, and we shouldn't be focusing on it, right? And so it is tough to figure out, but you have to do that regional work, verifying the mapping to put together that bigger story, right? Do what we've spent 2 weeks walking on, is this a sign of the fingerprint of a much larger porphyry system that's just undercover, or is it something else? And so that's what it's certainly not perfect, and we get it wrong at times too, but that's the important thing, I think, is trying to establish, does this have true scale, or is it just a little flash in the pan and a crack, a third order crack along a range front that truly isn't going to be carrying, doesn't have any chance to grow to much else. So yeah, that's kind of the things that we try to establish early, and then once we have stakes in the ground, we take it even further and start backpack drilling and collecting more data.
So you've given us a little teaser here. It sounds like you guys have another project that you're putting together. What can you tell us about that? Has that been staked? Is that something that you got from someone else?
We're not. We've decided we're not going to option projects from anyone anymore. Just we want royalty-free projects that have zero work commitments. We don't want an early stage project to dictate how we explore more advanced assets like Selena, for example, right? I don't want to have $1 million work commitment on some early stage project, which takes money away maybe from Selena. So we want that flexibility. Not saying we'll never option a project from someone again if it's an absolute screamer, but we are looking at a district right now that we're pretty excited about. There will be stakes going in the ground over the summer, and it's going to be a little while before I think, we want to fully understand the opportunity and make sure we completely have the land position sewn up for everything that we could possibly want before we go public with it. So that's about as much info as I can give now, but I can say that we are looking for more, call it Big Blue and Selena type opportunities, and that's what we think we found.
So with Big Blue, I think I recall you said you found this in early 2023, and it was maybe staked around mid-year. So at what point did you decide that we really need to stake this? And then what is the staking process? Like, how long does it take to stake something, like that, there in the US?
Well, a lot of groups pay for third parties to go stake for them. There's lots of service companies in Nevada that do a great job of that. We actually started staking ourselves. One, we wanted to be able to do things with no one else. We really, loose lips in Nevada. Lots of rumors start flying if big ground starts getting stake or big chunks of ground. So we do everything in house now, so that we can kind of keep everything completely under wraps. And it would cost $100 a claim to stake to have a third party go. You'd have to pay $100 just to go stake that ground. So our team doing that in house, if we're staking a 500 or 600 claim district, you can see how much money that can save you, right? So the process is pretty simple, to be honest. It's the same as it's been for 100 years, 100 plus years now. So you go out there with 1 by 1 stakes. You have to put a location monument in, which that is essentially, consider it like that's the ID of each claim. So each claim has a location monument, which has all of the claim information, the ownership information on that claim, and then you have to corner that claim with 4 additional posts. Right, the claims are 1,200 feet long by 600 feet wide, and you have to put together a staking plan that makes sure that you seamlessly stake all of, if you're trying to do a big square of 300 claims, you need to make sure that all of your GPS coordinates are perfectly oriented so that you don't have gaps and slivers of open ground between the claims that you stake. So it is something that takes a little bit of practice to learn, but it's not hard by any stretch, and anybody could go out and do it if they were really serious about going out and staking their own claims.
So in Canada, this is all done on the computer with a few clicks. Why is it done still this way in the U.S.? Why are we still doing it the way it was done 100 years ago?
Well, you know what? I hated it when I first came here, right? Like, I'm a Canadian geo, and I thought, like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, right? Like, back home in Canada, I could just sit at a computer and stake, 10,000 hectares of ground, right? If you wanted to. But I actually really love that it's actually old school, because what it does is it gives local teams like Ridgelines a huge advantage over, let's say, a group that's based in Vancouver or Toronto, because we're able to go out if we see something we really like. For example, at Big Blue, Mike showed me, the high grade skarn at Delker. We figured out after doing some land research, 2 days of land research, that Peter McGaw and the Rain of Silver folks owned the Medicine Springs project, which is the adjacent, call it CRD portion of the bigger porphyry system. And once we realized, okay, there's 6 to 10% copper at surface in a past producing mine on BLM ground in Nevada. It didn't take, I think, within a week we had stakes in the ground, the initial stakes in the ground at Big Blue. So that's what I love about you have that edge in Nevada, and you can't just have a guy, looking at a map online and staking key chunks of ground in Nevada, right? Like, you have to pay a lot of money either for a third party to do it, or you got to go do it yourself, and it levels the playing field. Um, I guess maybe it actually tips it in our favor, to be honest, but that's fine by me. Um, but I think that's, I don't know why they've continued to keep doing it the way they do. That I can't answer, but I'm a big fan. It's working out in our favor.
Yeah, well, I think I know the answer is that, and that is that everybody's just okay with keeping it the mining code from the 1870s and not changing it, because changing something like that would be an enormous process,
Yep.
and Washington would probably make it worse. So
No, you're right.
everybody's fine with just keeping it the way it is, because they know how they know how to work around it.
Yeah. No, you're
As
probably
perfectly imperfect as it is.
you're probably right. Any amendments to that 1800s mining law actually opens up the door for there to be amendments to the current the royalties as well,
Exactly.
which is always a hot topic. You
Exactly.
see governments want to see that royalty increased. Mining industry obviously doesn't. So
All right. Final topic. So you've found the prospect. You've done
yep.
all the field work. You've staked it. You've done your IP, your mag, VTEM, or whatever you're doing, and now you're ready to drill. So, drill program. This is a highly misunderstood aspect of the junior mining sector for regular investors who haven't really been there and done it. So, the drill program. How do you run a drill program? Who does the drilling? How do you work the deal? How do they get paid? How long does it take to drill? What could go wrong with a drill program?
Oh man, don't get me started on that. We'll be here till tomorrow on what could go wrong. So first step is permitting with the BLM or the Forest Service. Most of Nevada is BLM, Bureau of Land Management, federal land claims, which you can just go ahead and stake, which is what we focus on operating on. We don't do U.S. Forest Service whenever possible. You would go in, you do a 5 acre notice of intent. It's a 30-day permit. You pretty much go there. There's a set template of providing maps and assurances that you're going to operate within BLM guidelines. They will then approve that drill program, let's say for 20 drill pads and 5,000 feet of drill roads to access them. You then have to bond with the state, which means essentially before you even put a blade on the ground to create your drill pad, you have to provide a bond. It can be usually for a no notice, somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000, which is essentially what it would cost for the state to come in and rehabilitate those roads and pads that you intend on building if you were to go bankrupt and just walk away from the project, which happens all the time, right? You get companies being bad operators, they do a bunch of disturbance and then they walk away and can't fix it. So that's the first step. You get your bond approved, you do your dirt work. While that's all going on, the company like us, in the past, we'd be probably sending out to 3, 4 drill companies for bids, be providing the scope of the contract to them. They come back to you, you pick your drilling contractor, you get your bond approved, and you go out and build your pads and start drilling. The process usually takes, kind of 2 or 3 months, you could say, from start to finish, I guess you could say, between permitting and your contractors. Um, it's pretty tricky, right? Like in Nevada, water is a big issue. There's lots of groundwater, but actually, finding a well that you can access can be difficult. So depending on where you are, you have to secure water access through a local rancher or a landowner. You'll have to negotiate a purchase agreement with them to purchase that water. Usually it's 3 to 5 cents a gallon. And you're using up to 10,000 gallons per day on a drill program, right? So all these little things add up, and I think that's what maybe really gets lost on both new geos who are starting working in Nevada, and as well as non-technical folks, is that the drill contract is just the start of your cost, right? You have water costs, you have mud products to keep your hole drilling smoothly, you have your overhead of your drillers, you have the overhead of your teams and logistics and access and everything. So, just your drill contract. Let's say you think that you can drill for, I don't know, 70, $80 a foot. You'd be wrong, right? You're actually looking at a drill program in Nevada typically with core. You're looking at somewhere between anywhere all in for all of those costs, easily $150 a foot, all the way up to you can be $250 a foot if you're drilling, 3,000 foot holes or close to 1,000 meter drill holes for you metric folks. So yeah, costs can escalate dramatically. There's a lot of factors that play into the cost of a drill program, which can cause it to really go off the rails for any company. And that's part of the reason why I actually founded a drill company with some partners, was because we were really struggling to get um, quality drillers that we could rely on when we needed the rigs. And so that was the impetus for us to found our drilling company, which isn't tied to Ridgeline in any way. It's a private business. It's out there to make money. But when I contract it to Ridgeline, we announce a related party transaction in our financials, and our drill company last time we drilled operated for a 25% discount to market rate. So we essentially drilled for cost. That was our profit margin for the drill company. We just pretty much drilled for cost, and it provided Ridgeline with a steady drilling for a good program. So yeah, drilling companies or drill programs can be really tricky. And you need good geologists out in the field that have been there, seen it before, and know how to work through problems, because there's always something that comes up.
So it's different depending upon the drill contractor and the contract that you sign with them. But
Yep.
Is it standard to pay per meter drilled, or is it standard to pay by the hour, by the day? How do these contracts work?
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually both. So the standard contract in Nevada these days is you have a base footage contract. So you're charged for every foot drilled. It's typically around $50 to $60 a foot, depending on the contractor, starting from surface. And then it just escalates up the deeper you go. On top of that, there's hourly charges. And the reason is in Nevada, the drilling is very difficult, very broken up limestones, can be very difficult to drill and very slow. So if you operated on just a footage contract, a lot of drilling contractors would absolutely lose their shirt, right? Because some days you might only get 5 feet of core, 10 feet of core, right? Because you're dealing with the hole caving in, with changing bits, etc., at a high rate. So the mix of hourly plus footage keeps it, I guess you could say, fair for both parties. And yeah, it's always, I mean, I remember every single drill program as a geo, you're on edge, right? Because no matter what you do, the costs are higher than you'd hoped. And typically there's always There's always difficulties with the programs, right? Lost holes, slow production, you name it. But I haven't had a program in 5 years that has what I'd say gone seamlessly. But you kind of just got to get used to it and roll with it.
Get used to it and roll with it and be creative and dealing with problems.
Yep.
So, final question about laboratory results. So,
Yep.
I mean, I know a bit about this now. So, the drill core is pulled out in a big core tube, and then they put it in cardboard boxes, these wax cardboard boxes, and then
Yep.
they drive it to the core shack. The geos inspect the core, they log the core, and then it's cut in the core shack and
Yep.
then sampled and sent off to the lab. Is that correct?
Yep, you haven't missed anything there. The geos try to take representative samples. They break their samples out by lithology, structure, alteration, mineralization, just all the different factors, essentially to make sure that the samples going to the lab are all representative, essentially, you could say, from, lithology to lithology, etc. And typically, if it might take a week to 2 weeks for samples from a hole to fully get logged, cut, and bagged and off to a lab, and then, the lab typically we're talking 3 to 5 weeks right now is a reasonable turnaround in the Western US. So, you can easily say that if it takes you 2 weeks to drill a hole, you can add in another 10 days to 2 weeks to get that those samples off to the lab, and then it can take you another 3 to 5 weeks after that. So it's a slow, it's a pretty slow process from start to finish, from collaring a hole to reporting assays.
So from the start of the hole, like once the diamond drill pierces the earth to getting assays back from the lab, 2 months would be like an optimistic timeline, and
Yep.
it could very well run into 3 months.
It could, yeah. It just depends on the depth of the hole. You can, if you're really, really want to get it off to the lab, you could be making sure that it's being, cut in real time, which we always try to do. But there's delays. But you can be cutting it in real time. You could have it off to the lab the day after the hole's cut. You could pay for rush assays and get your results in 2 to 3 weeks. So really, it really comes down to cost, right? If you're willing to spend the money, you can drastically speed up the rate that you get assays back. But I mean, unless you hit something that clearly is going to be a major, uh, you know, win for the company, we just wait for it to come back from the lab. Every time it seems like I get excited and I rush a hole, it comes back disappointing. So we've kind of got away from doing that.
So how much does it cost to do the rush process? Like, let's say you have like 100 meters of core that you're
Yeah.
pretty excited about. Like, how much is that going to cost you more than it would normally cost?
Well, so you're looking at somewhere around, let's just say, $50 a sample, all in cost to get an assay run at the lab, and that's like a full 42 element suite. Um, so the kind of work that you should be doing, if you're just running for gold and silver, you can get an assay done for about $20, but wouldn't recommend it unless you're just drilling off a gold resource or something. But but yeah, so you're looking at, if you want to get the results, let's say you want to get the results. I think where we go to, if we want them in 3 weeks guaranteed, three business weeks, it's three times the cost of, so it's $150 a sample. If we want it in, I think it's 2 weeks, it's four times the cost, and if we want it in under 5 days, they'll guarantee it, but it's five times the cost of the sample. So I mean, we're talking about a drastic escalation in cost.
So for 100 meters of core, what's 5 times the cost?
Oh geez, you're putting me on the spot with you're putting me on the spot with math here. But I mean, Jesus,
Ballpark.
if you're doing a meter sample, it's 100 samples times $250
Oh,
per
okay. So it's
sample.
like $25,000. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, for
Okay.
something that should cost you more like $7,000 or $8,000, right?
Okay. Got
Or
it.
not even $5,000, $6,000. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. If anybody has any questions for Chad, we got about 10 minutes left. Please, ask to speak, and I'll activate your mic. So, as far as like the turnaround time, because sometimes I've seen assays come back in world record speed. Like the hole started 6 weeks ago. The company's got the assays. Of course, it's good news though. And then I've seen assays take 4 months, maybe in extreme cases 5 months, and the news is always bad. So,
Yeah.
how do you account for that? That somehow the bad news always takes a really long time to get, and the good news always comes super fast.
Well, that's the beauty of junior mining, right? I guess what, and I'm being facetious here because there's a lot of BS that goes around. Yeah, I mean, look, there is no scenario in the current markets we're in where it takes 3 to 4 months to get assays. If a company's taking that long, it's because they're withholding assays because they want to raise money or they don't want to have to tell their shareholders that they struck out. You name it, but there's no logical reason in my mind where I can think of a situation anytime in the last 12 months where if a company took 3 to 4 months to get their assays, that is above board, right? And that's someone might call bullshit on that, but it's the truth, at least in where we're working. But I mean, look, if I wanted to, I can call the lab and say, don't send me any assays for a month, right? We can do that. I can just call them and say, I don't want to see anything from you. I don't want to know why, but I don't want to see these assays, right? You could do that. I don't, right? Like as soon as we get assays, we send them out as quick as we can. I just, in my opinion, the shareholders have the right to know whether it's good or bad. So we just put assays out as they come. But there is certainly all kinds of manipulation that any group can do if they want to speed up or slow down results as they see fit.
Okay, and I got to ask you this question just because it popped in my head. So we heard about an unfortunate example of a CEO who was doing some very shady stuff with assays. When you get your assay results, who else sees those, and who do you share them with?
Right. Well, in our case, the assays are directed directly to our vice president of exploration, Mike Harp. Right. He's our qualified person for the company. So if I, for example, called the lab and said, assays come straight to me, they bypass everyone else, blah, 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 that would be really suspect, right? And Mike Harp, for example, if I tried to pull that stuff on him, he'd either raise a stink or he'd outright quit, right? Like that's not acceptable for assays to be going to a single person. I know exactly what you're talking about. The company. I think we all do. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole with naming and shaming, but yeah, it should be going to your entire technical team. There's no secrets. Like I don't need to send it to my board. My board doesn't want to see individual assays coming in. What we do have is our technical lead on our board is Lewis Teal, and he reviews press releases alongside Mike and myself as well. And in some cases on really good press releases, he's requested our assay certificates and our assay database, and he'll calculate his own composites and double check our numbers, right, and then look. So that's just good corporate governance. And if you have a good quality team, which most teams are, they're already doing all that stuff, right? It's not something we advertise because that's boring stuff that most people don't care about. But if you
Yeah,
got a
it's
good
to be
group,
expected. It's like
yeah,
assumed, but now
yeah,
after you hear these horror stories, you got to ask the questions.
you do, yeah, yeah.
Final topic. We'll wrap it up with 5 minutes here, Chad. Most memorable story from a drill program. It could be good, it could be bad, it could just be funny, but something that really stands out in your mind from your experience is like, this was a good story.
Well, I can tell you how the Chinchilla zone was named at Selena, if that's so. We're out drilling Selena in I think it's our second drill program in 2020. At the time, Starlink wasn't around, so we had no cell phone service. We were all camping out at site, and we drove 45 minutes from the drill site. We were able to actually get weak cell service. So we get out there in the evening to call all of our spouses, let them know we're okay. And Mike's phone starts blowing up, right? And texts and emails and upset voicemails from his wife. It turns out that their daughter's brand new Chinchilla that they'd just gotten for her birthday had gotten sick, and and what, long story short, is because they weren't able to reach Mike to help solve the problem. His wife and the kids ended up driving this poor Chinchilla all the way to Salt Lake City which is 4 hour drive for an emergency vet visit in the middle of the night. And so Mike now owns a chinchilla that costs thousands of dollars. And so we thought that was pretty darn funny, and he was pretty stressed about it. And so we decided, in honor of that, we'd name the chinchilla oxide discovery, the new discovery we had, as the chinchilla zone. So I mean, that's just a total fluff one. But whenever you're out drilling, it seems like random crazy stuff happens. Whether it's I've had drillers. One driller got so mad one time he ripped his shirt off in the middle of. He was so mad at the drill that he ripped his shirt off and walked off the job. What he forgot about is we were 50 miles from the nearest town, so we let him walk for about 6 hours in the heat in the middle of Nevada in the summer with no shirt on,
Oh God.
and
Oh my
and,
God.
and the drill foreman said, "I said, are we going to go get him?" He goes, "No, we're going to let him walk a while." And so he walked down the road heading
Yeah,
back
that'll get him to cool off a bit. I mean,
yeah.
heat
Yeah.
up.
So I mean, literally, like, drill programs push everybody to their limits typically, and honestly, Nevada's fairly straightforward. I mean, I can't imagine running, fly-in jobs. I used to do that in Canada, fly jobs, remote jobs, ice roads and stuff. And I mean, that was a whole different level of stress, right? I mean, Nevada at the end of the day is pretty chill when it comes to that stuff, but there's always something that comes up. You just got to be able to roll with it.
Yeah, I've been impressed by some of the programs I've seen there, and the one I just saw, Hercules was really impressive, where the geos are staying in an air conditioned house with Wi-Fi, and their core shack is on the same property, so it's all there. Like, they don't need to really go anywhere aside from going to check the drills occasionally. But pretty nice setup. I was like, this is not the way it is in the Yukon.
Oh,
Um,
pretty spoiled nowadays. That's for sure. I used to sleep in a prospector's tent for months, right in the middle of the bush, and I look back at that and go, yeah, we got it pretty good down here. It's expensive, but it's not that hard.
all right, Chad, I promise you we keep it to 40 minutes. Thanks a lot. I think this is a really great conversation. Look forward to doing it again. Also seeing you at the Rules Symposium in Boca Raton next month.
Yeah, thanks, man. If anybody has any questions, you can go on our website. You can look at our PRs, my email, my cell phone. They're all listed on our press releases for anybody to call. So if you come up with any questions or we're just too shy to ask today, feel free to reach out.
All right, thanks, Chad, and thanks for tuning in, everyone. Cheers.
All right, cheers, guys.